Amen. Okay. So we're just going to continue with our math topics from last meeting. So last time we discussed properties of equality, right? So we are studying four sections. We have equality, properties of equality and equations. So linear equations, basically, we have inequalities, the Cartesian plane, and word problems. So last meeting, we covered the different axioms of equality. These are the reflexive property, symmetric property, transitive property, addition property, multiplication property, and substitution property. So these are your very basic axioms, right, from your algebra classes. And it always shows up, not just for your math classes, but also for your physics and chemistry classes, and sometimes sa biology, rin, diba? And then you'll be using them all of the time. So for today, we are moving to quadratic equations. Okay, so for quadratic equations, just forgive my handwriting. We have basic ax squared plus bx plus c. So other than abstract reasoning that we discussed, for some exams, meron din silang section na numerical reasoning. So what that means is you have to look for patterns and its numerical progression. Pwedeng arithmetic progression, pwede ring geometric progression. And something that would help you is to be very familiar with your rules, algebraic identities, not rules, formulas. So formula for quadratic equation, for ano pa ba? Yung algebraic identities mo. So note this down. Algebraic identities, kapag kabisado mo 'to, mas madali din mag-solve kasi makikita mo yung pattern ng numbers and then you can use some shortcuts. So kabisaduhin mo 'to, there's 8, I believe 6 or 8, depending on your level sa class. You've either already covered 6 or 8. Anyway, algebraic identities, and then pag kabisado mo siya, mas mabilis ka mag-solve sa math for sure. Okay, so let's look at for solving quadratic equations. Our first method, of course, is always the factoring method, right? So we have factoring, and then we have completing the square. So for completing the square, so let's say we have our formula as well, which is adding for a two both sides and then adding as well, right? Then of course you have the quadratic formula as well. This one has rule set. Balikan natin to later when we're at this section. And then we have the quadratic formula, dapat kabisado mo rin to, which is x is equal to negative b plus minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a, right? So this one, lagi mo tang magagamit for solving your roots, etc., especially in your Gen Math classes. Okay, so for now, let's look at factoring. So for your factoring method, right, let's say you have x plus 3 and 5x minus 4. This one is already factored for you. What are the different values of x? How would you solve this? Do you remember?
Wait lang po. Parang na-remember ko naman.
Okay, sige.
Sige nga po, hindi ko na po masyado tanda.
Okay lang. That's why we're reviewing this, alright? So if it's already factored for you, you just equate it to zero. So you want your equation to be in this format and then factor it out. This one's already factored, so it's just x plus 3 is equal to 0. And then you have 5x minus 4 is equal to 0. Isolate x, you have x is equal to negative 3. And then you have x is equal to negative 4 over 5, right? Transpose positive 4. But add 4 to both sides, divide both sides by 5, you get positive 4 over 5. So these are your zeros. So if, for example, your formula is not yet factored or simplified, you have to factor it yourself. So let's say we have 2x squared plus x is equal to 0. Does it already follow the ax squared plus bx plus c pattern? Yes, right? So now we can just factor it. So we have x, since dalawa lang to, we just factor out x from both sides. And then you will have 2x. So it's 2x times x, 2x plus 1, right? So x times 2x is 2x squared, and then x times 1 is x. So we equate it to 0, x is 0, 2x plus 1 is equal to 0. We have x is equal to negative 1 over 2. Clear so far?
Isa pa nga po.
Kapag medyo mabilis, sabihan mo lang.
Okay po.
So we have the GCF, greatest common factor. So you just have to look for it in your numbers. So our common factor for 2x squared and x is x. So we divide both by x. Divide this by x, you get 2x. Divide this by x, you get positive 1. It's equal to 0. And then, so these are your two factors, x and 2x plus 1. Equate them both to 0. So you have x is 0. That's your first root. And then you have 2x plus 1 is equal to 0. So subtract 1 from both sides. You have 2x is equal to negative 1. Divide both sides by 2. You get x is equal to negative 1. So these are
Oh,
roots. Sometimes it's called roots. Sometimes it's called zeros. Basically the values of x. X is 0 and x is negative 1/2. So technically, yeah, this is how we would write this. Okay? Let's try another example. So we have 2x squared minus x is 6. So again, step 1 is to rewrite your equation or simplify your equation to the quadratic formula, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. So all we need to do is transpose 6 to the left-hand side. So we have LHS and RHS. So pag sinabi kong left-hand side, it means to the left of the equal sign. So we have 2x squared minus x minus 6 is equal to 0. So 0 is already isolated. Now we can factor it out. So we have 2x here. So of course, our factors would be 2x and x. So if you remember your FOIL method, so what this means is this number is your inner and outer, and then you will have this one and this one. So your goal is to factor out your equation so that your factors, and no one else to call them, your factors, kapag minultiply mo ulit siya, it will still give you the same equation. Right? So we have 2x squared, so that's 2x and x. Now, rule dito, since this is trial and error, but you can also just do it in your head, is when you multiply your numbers, it should give you C, but when you add them, it should give you B. By C and B, I mean this. Okay? So for 6, our factors for 6 are 3 and 2, 3 and 2, 6 and 1. Right? And of course, it has to be negative 6. So medyo mas madami tayong number. Either negative 3, positive 2, negative 6 and positive 1, or 3, negative 2, and 6, negative 1. So to factor this out, I have here 2x, right? And then we have 3. So medyo mas madami tayong kailangan consider. Now, let's try 3 and 2. Okay? If we have 3 and 2 here, when you multiply them over here, when you multiply them, it's 6. And then if we add them, this would be 3 and 4, right? 3 times
Yes
x,
po.
then 4x. So 3x, 4x, which one should I make negative? The 3x or the 4x? To give me negative 1.
Yung 3x po.
No, it should be the 4. Kasi you want to make negative 1. Kasi if it's negative 4 and 3, or positive 4 and negative 3, pag 4 and negative 3, that's equal to positive 1. But negative 4 plus 3 is equal to negative 1. And that's what we want, negative 1x over here. Right? So that's what we're gonna do. We have 2, 2. So I need to make this negative, and then this will be positive. Who has so far? Nasundan ba?
Yes po. Medyo nalilito lang po ng konti.
So, you can always double check naman your answers. So, kapag chinek natin to, let's use a different color. This one. So, diba? So, 2x times x is 2x squared. And then we have 2x times 2 is negative 4x. And then we have 3 times x is 3x. And then we have 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. So if we add this, we get 2x squared minus x minus 6. So tama naman siya. Diba? So you can always double check. So since tama yung answer natin, tama yung factors, we can do the final step na, solving for our zeros. So we have 2x plus 3 is equal to 0, and x minus 2 is equal to 0. So we have 2x is equal to negative 3. Divide both sides by 2. You get x is equal to negative 3 over 2. And then in here, we just have add 2 to both sides. You get x. Nasundan?
Opo.
Let's do one last example. So all of our rules so far will apply. Okay. So we have x times 2x plus 7 minus 15 is equal to 0. So this one, it's not yet in the ax squared form. So what we need to do first is to simplify our equations, write it into the ax squared form, and then we can factor it out. So yun yung step 1 natin. Step 1, rewrite it into quadratic formula. Step 2 is factor and solve for your zeros, or solve for your x. So we have here, so distribute, we have 2x squared plus
7x
7x minus 15.
minus 15.
Yep. Okay na, no? We already know our quadratic formula. So next step, we just have to factor this out. So, hirap lang ito kasi we have 15 and 7, which are prime numbers. So for 15, we just have, 15 pala is not prime lang. So we just have 15 and 1, and then 3 and 5. These are our possible pairs. Now you have to consider that we have that A is 2. So by default, this is 2x and x. So any number, since this number will be multiplied to the number in this position, right? Our best bet is to use 3 and 5, right? Tapos ayun na lang yung manipulate mo. And if you look at it, 2 times 5 makes 10. And then if you minus 3, you will get 7x. Nasundan yung logic so far?
Yes po.
Diba? So we want a positive 10. So I'm gonna make this plus 5. And then we want a minus 3. Kasi pag minultiply mo to, this would be 10x.
10x.
Then this is be minus 3x, which
3x.
would be 7x. And then negative 3 times 5 is of course negative 15. So,
15.
tama na, diba?
Opo.
So, let's erase this one. And then let's solve for our zeros. So, 2x minus 3, what's the value of x?
Po.
What's the value of x for 2x minus 3? You have pen and paper, right?
Opo.
What's the value of x for 2x minus 3?
Three po.
3 lang. How about the 2? You still need to divide both
Ay.
sides.
3/2 po.
Kamukha. How about for this one? X is
5
negative 5.
negative.
This is
Ba't
positive.
nga po pala naging negative?
Kasi when you transpose, it changes sign, right? So x plus 5 is equal to 0. So anything you do on the left-hand side for the equation to stay the same or equal, you have to, whatever you do on the left-hand side, you have to do on the right-hand side. So this is going back to our axioms, right? If A plus B, if A is equal to C, then A plus B is equal to C plus B. Yung plus B na to, ito yung pinapalitan mo sa left and right hand side to isolate x. So what that means is, if you subtract 5 from this side to make this x, you have to subtract 5 from this side also. So this is 0 minus 5, magiging x minus 5. Kuha?
Opo.
So, let's move on. So next we have completing the square method. So sometimes you have equations where you cannot factor it out. So yung factoring, it doesn't work out. Okay, so what we do is completing square. So for completing the square, step 1 pa rin natin is to rewrite the equation in the quadratic formula, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. So rewrite the equation, identify the value of a, b, and c. Step 3 is to isolate c. So rewrite the equation in this format and then rewrite it again into ax squared plus bx is equal to negative c. Again, applying our axiom where if you subtract c from this side, you also subtract c from the right-hand side. So this will be our formula that you use for completing the square. Solve for identify the values of A and B. And then what we do is multiply both sides to 4A. So 4A times ax squared plus bx is equal to 4A times negative c. And then our next step, sa ng pula, is to add b squared to both sides. So we have 4A ax squared plus bx, and then add the value of b squared to both sides. So let's try that with our example problem. So let's say we have 6x squared minus x minus 12 is equal to 0. This one is already in the quadratic formula format, so we just have to rewrite it to this format over here. Okay? So, tapatan na natin siya. So, we have 6x squared minus x is equal to 12. Tama? Positive 12?
Opo.
So let's identify our values. A is equal to 6, B is equal to negative 1, and then C is equal to
12.
kasi
Negative 12.
originally it's negative 12.
Okay.
So our next step is to multiply both sides by 4A. So 4A is equal to 24. So this is our formula. And then we're just gonna multiply it by 24. So it's 24 times 6x squared minus x is equal to 24 times 12. Let me just grab my calculator. And then let's multiply by 24. You will have 144 x squared minus 24x is equal to 24 times 12 is equal to 288. And then for our next step, the blue step, is to add b squared to both sides. So here, b squared is negative 1 times negative 1 or positive 1. So lastly, we just add 1 to both sides. Add 1, add 1. We get 144 x squared minus 24x plus 1 is equal to 289. Now, what this does in completing the square is that the right-hand side becomes factorable. Okay? Para pwede na nating gawin yung gantong step. Okay? So, this is factorable na at this time. So, this is 12 times 12. So 12x times 12x. And then we want to get 24. So we both want them to be negative 1. Para negative 12x, negative 12x, you will get negative 24x. Kuha.
Opo.
So these are our factors na is equal to 209. So lastly, we have, since this is a square, right, this is a square, this is, gonna put this here, wala ng space. So we have 12x minus 1 squared is equal to 289. 289 is 17 times 17. So, ang mangyayari dyan, since it's squared, 12x minus 1 is equal to positive negative 17. Ito yung rule niya. Kapag it's squared, explain ko yung step I skipped the step.
Okay po.
The step here is you have to square both sides. Okay? So this square root, sorry, you have to square root. If you square root this side, it will become 12x minus 1. Okay? And the square root of 289 is positive negative 17. Kuha.
Opo.
So we have 12x minus 1 is equal to 17. And 12x minus 1 is equal to negative 17. So we have x is 18 over 12. And then we have x is equal. Kita mo ba yung screen?
Opo.
X is 12, x is negative 16 over 12. And then you just have to simplify it. Our last number is, I'm gonna write over here. Color code naman siya. Our last number, simplify 18 over 12 and 16 over 12. You have x is negative 4 over 3 and x is 3 over 3. This is the final answer. Nasundan so far lahat ng steps.
Opo.
Next. Let's try one more example. Isa to sa medyo mas complicated na lesson. Pero kailangan mo lang naman tandaan is rewrite your equation into the quadratic formula. There's 7 steps. But personally, I just simplify it into 3 steps. Step 1 is to write the formula into, or rewrite your equation into the quadratic formula, which is ax squared plus bx plus c. Step 2 is multiply it by 4a. And then step 3 is add b squared. Right? So let's try another equation. We have x 2x plus 7 minus 15 is equal to 0. So again, step 1, right? So step 1 is to rewrite into quadratic formula. So let's solve. We have 2x squared plus 7x minus 15 is equal to 0, which means a is 2, b is 7,
7.
and c is negative 15.
Negative.
So rewrite, isolate c. We have 2x squared plus 7x
7x.
is positive 15.
Positive.
Next step, multiply both sides by 4a. So let's multiply both sides by, so 4a is 2 times 4, 8. So multiply both sides by 8. We have 16x squared, 8 times 7 is 56. Is equal to 15 times 8 is 120. And then step 3, add b squared to both sides. So b squared, 7 times 7 is 49. So add 49. Add 49. We have, nasusundan?
Opo. Sinusulit ko po.
Sabihan mo lang ako pag mabilis
Okay.
Nakalimutan ko isulat yung x dito. Plus 56x plus 49 is equal to 120 plus 49 is 169. This is 13 squared, by the way. Okay. And then lastly, factor 9. So for this 2, this is 7, this is 4x, 4x times 4x, this is 7 times 7. So everything's positive naman. And then let's check if it will give us 56. 7 times 4 is 28x. 7 times 4 is 28x. 28 plus 28 is 56x, which means our factors are correct. And then 169 is 13 squared. So last step, factor both sides, square root both sides. we have 4x plus 7 is equal to positive negative 13. So last step, let's solve for our zeros. I'm gonna write it here. We have 4x plus 7 is equal to positive 13. And 4x plus 7 is equal to negative 13. So minus 7, you have 4x is equal to negative 6. Minus 7, positive 6. So x is 6 over 4 or 3 halves. Then here, minus 7 from both sides, that's 20. So x is, this is negative 20. Negative, divide both sides by 4, x is negative 5. So final answer, x is 3 over 2 and x is negative 5. Kuha?
Opo, medyo na ano lang po dito.
Mabilis lang.
Dito po sa... Paano po siya naging 13 squared?
169 is 13 times 13.
Okay.
So yung completing the square kasi, yung step natin na multiply by 4a and add b squared, what it does is it makes the left-hand side a perfect square and it makes the right-hand side a perfect square. If you remember from the first example, it's 17 squared and our second example is 13 squared. So kapag naging perfect square siya sa left and sa right, you know that you have the right answer. If hindi to perfect square yung right-hand side, you have to double check. Baka may na-miss ka na maling equation or solution along the steps. Okay? And then lastly, we have using the quadratic formula. Now, for using the quadratic formula, this is kind of your last resort. Kasi sometimes, factoring doesn't work. Completing the square doesn't work. So, ang last resort mo is using your quadratic formula. So, earlier I was using quadratic formula to mean quadratic equation, but yeah. So, this is your quadratic equation. Okay? Our quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. When we say quadratic formula, you have x is equal to negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So again, if method 1 doesn't work, method 2 doesn't work, then you have to use method 3. So this one is actually pretty easy. But yeah, ito yung default mo dapat, factoring or completing this. So if hindi talaga siya factorable, what you need to do is rewrite your equation into the quadratic format and then identify A, B, and C, and then just plug them into this formula. So that's why I said earlier, you just have to memorize this formula. So let's try an example. We have 4x squared plus x minus 3 is equal to 0. This one is already in the quadratic equation format. So we just have to identify our parts. A is 4, B is x, and C is negative 3.
Negative 3.
So just plug them in to your equation. You have negative 3. Wait mali. This is 1. B is 1. So you have negative 1 plus minus square root of b squared is 2, 1. Pagod na. So b squared is 1 minus 4ac. 4 times a times c. So it's 16 times negative 3. That is negative 3. 16 times negative 3 is 40. Tama, 40.
48.
And this is negative 4AC, so plus, right? Negative 4 times A times C. Okay. Over 2A. So 2A is 8. So simplify, we have x is negative 1 plus minus square root of 49 over 8. So our two values, so square root of 49 is 7. So our two values is x is equal to negative 1 plus 7 over 8. And x is equal to negative 1 minus 7 over 8. So this is 6 over 8. X is 3 over 4. Then we have negative 1 minus 7 is negative 8 over 8. X is negative 1. Sundan.
Opo.
Let's
Isa
try,
pa nga po.
let's try another example. So let's rewrite our quadratic formula ulit. It is negative b plus minus square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So step 1 is to simplify our equation. So let's say we have x times 2x minus 7 is equal to 15. So hindi pa siya naka-quadratic equation. So let's solve for this first. So we have 2x squared minus 7x is equal to minus 15 is equal to 0, which means A is 2, B is negative 7,
Negative 7.
and C is equal to 15.
15.
Okay. So let's just plug in all of our values. So we are looking for negative B. So that negative B is equal to 7. We need B squared. So B squared is 49. And then we need negative 4c. So that is negative 4 times A times C. So negative 4ac is equal to, this is 30.
30.
4 times 30 is 120. Huh? Wait, negative 15 pala to. So it's positive 120. Tama, di ba? Kasi C is negative 15. And then lastly, we have 2A. So 2A is equal to 4. So now that we have all of our components, we can just write them all down. So we have negative B, so 7, plus minus square root of B squared, that's 49, minus 4AC is positive 120. Then we have over 2A, which is 4. 49 plus 120 is 169. And then the square root of 169 is 13. So we have x is equal to 7 plus minus 13 over 4. So let's split this into 2. you have x is equal to 7 plus 13 over 4, and x is equal to 7 minus 13 is equal to 4. Rinig mo pa ba ako or malakas ko lang?
Rinig po.
Okay, let's solve. So 7 plus 13, this is positive 20 over 4. So x is equal to 5. 7 minus 13 is equal to 6 over 4. So x is equal to negative 3 over 2. Okay. So negative 13 to. 7 minus 13 is equal to negative 6. So yan na yung values natin. X is 5 and
3 over.
sundan.
Apa.
So this one, what I would recommend is balikan mo yung page 1 nung math exercises natin. And then using our lessons, i-double check mo yung mistakes. Okay? Pero hindi pa tayo tapos.
Okay pa.
Kalahati pa lang tayo ng part 1. I have 4 parts. So, for your quadratic formula, another part of that is what we call the discriminant, okay, which is the b squared minus 4ac. Okay? Now, for this one, the discriminant kasi, this tells you the nature of your roots. So, if you remember, your roots sometimes referred to as zeros in your polynomial equation lessons, which is a Gen Math lesson. I think Gen Math 1 is your discriminant determines the nature of your roots. What that means is, does it have two unequal real roots? So your type 1 is you have two unequal and real roots. Merong mga gantong type of questions, lalo na sa assets. How will you, what is the nature of your roots, or how many roots does the equation have? Union types of questions that you will encounter. The second type is if you have two equal roots. And then the third type is you have zero roots or you have non-real roots. Okay. Now, how will you know? So using the quadratic formula, specifically your discriminant, if your discriminant is greater than 0, then it's type 1. You have two unique roots. One unequal is sometimes referred to as unique roots. Okay. If your discriminant is equal to 0, you have two equal roots. What this means, it's repeating or the same. And then if you have discriminant is less than 0, you don't have equal roots. So they are real roots. They're non-real, sometimes referred to as complex. So usually, you remember your imaginary numbers. So that is when it will come into play. So let's say, for example, you have 5x squared plus 3x is equal to 2. So we just have to rewrite it first. So we have 5x squared plus 3x minus 2 is equal to 0, which means A is 5, B is 3, and then C is equal to negative 2.
Negative 2.
B squared is 9 minus 4ac. So 4 times 5 times negative 2. This is 20 times negative 2 is negative 40. Apply the negative. You have 9 plus 40 is equal to 49. So our discriminant is equal to 49. So it's type 1, right? Because it's greater than 0. Another example. Clear so far? For
Opo.
example. Let's try another example. We have x times 7 minus 2x equal to 10. So let's simplify. This is 7x minus x times negative 2, 14x transpose 10, negative 10 is equal to 0. Double check ko lang. Okay. So A is 7, B is negative 14, and C is negative 10. So again, it's just apply B squared minus 4AC. B squared is negative 14 squared. 14 squared is 196 minus 4 times A times C. Right? 4 times 7 is 28. 28 times negative 10 is negative 280. The negative of negative 280 is positive, so it's 196 plus 280. Again, type 1 since it's greater than 0. Yeah, ganun lang naman siya actually. Now, kuha naman,
Opo.
what? Now for the next section, we have product, sum of roots, and product of roots. Now for this one, you don't actually literally, I mean, you can add or multiply the roots. So for example, sa previous question natin, we solved for our roots and our roots were 5 and negative 3/2, di ba? Yung pinaka-recent na sinolve natin, right? If you want, you can add them or multiply them. Pero it takes a while to solve for the roots, di ba? Kasi you have to do the whole negative b plus minus b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So, sayang time. So for sum of roots and product of roots, so this would also show up in your exams. So what is the sum of the roots of the equation? What is the product of the roots of the equation? There's actually a shortcut. So first step is to rewrite your equation into the quadratic equation, which is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So instead of doing the whole quadratic formula to solve for the roots, you can just identify A, B, and C. And then for sum of roots, it's root 1 plus root 2. The shortcut of this is negative B over A. And then for product of roots, R1, R2, the shortcut is C over A. So all you need to do is, if you have an equation, so let's try an equation for this one. And I clear everything. So for sum, R1 plus R2, this is 1, is equal to negative B over A. And then for product, or R1 times R2, is equal to C over A. If, for example, you have the equation 5x squared plus 2x plus 3 is equal to 0. So instead of going through all the trouble, yun lang, kailangan mo itong kabisaduhin. No? Pero kung hindi mo siya matandaan, you just have to go the long way of solving for the roots. So identify A is 5, B is 2, 3.
3.
The sum is Negative B over A. Done. And then the product of the roots is C over A, 3 over 5. Yun na. Yun na yung shortcut, no?
Ah,
Okay? So, yan. So, na-review na natin now, no? So, reviewin mo yung section 1 of your practice question. Let me share it.